Alright, so since I had my last video about dependent dropdowns, I've had a lot of requests to create a dependent dropdown that will go for another level. So basically what we're trying to do, we're trying to create little drop-down validations lists. So basically if I pick one thing in the first column, I will only have some options in the second column. And then if I pick some option in the second column, I will have only certain options in the third column. That's what I'm going to try to do in this one. So let me explain you what the logic is going to be. So for me, I have this options tab. And here I have all the options listed. So the idea here is that the first column will be different regions. So if we select, for example, Midwestern here in the first column, we should only get states that are in Midwestern. So if we look here, we should get only Illinois here is one of them, and Indiana is another one, right? Now, if we select Southern, then we're going to get like this one and this one right here. So then if we do Midwestern and Illinois in the second column right here, then we want to just get representatives from those. So the logic that I'm going to use here is that if I structure my data like this in the options tab, if I could just take this list and filter it and just filter it to whatever is selected in that first drop down right here. So if it's Midwestern, we'll filter it to Midwestern. Then we can get a list of states we should be selecting. And then if we also select, let's say, Illinois here, and we filter this column to, say, Illinois, then we're going to have just a list of sales reps that we need to have as a drop down in the third column. So that's the logic I'm going to go with to structure this data and basically just make it happen. Now, we could have used filter function to do this if we were just trying to do this for one row, but I want this to work for the whole column, so we're gonna have to use some app scripts to make this happen. So let's get started with a basic thing. So let's make sure we just get a drop down here that will select the region from this column from our options tab. So that's going to be actually a very easy thing. We don't need to do any app scripts for this. All we have to do, just select the area where we need to apply that validation. I'm just going to highlight some area here, go under data, go data validation, and then I'm going to do list from a range and click here in this box. I want to reject any input that's anything different than what's selected. I'm going to click here, go to my options tab, and basically just select, and I'm going to select a lot more, thinking that if we're adding more options here, I just want to make sure we have those in the list as well. I'm going to hit OK, save, and that should take care of that part. So as of right now, I should have my first column of validation. If I open this, see, I just have these. Now, the way Google Sheets is going to do, it's going to filter these out anyways. So we're not going to get every single one of this list. We're just going to get a unique list. So basically here, I only get a nice clean list of 3 regions. So that works. So the next level that we need to do, we need to start using scripts. This is where it's going to get a little complicated. So what I want to do here, I want to make sure that this is selected like Midwestern. Then this is going to be a drop-down list of basically the options that match from here. So for that, I'm going to go to my tools and script editor, and we're going to get started with our code. I'm going to zoom in a little bit, save this. And this project, I'm going to do DDVL. So that's our drop-down validation. Really call it anything you like, obviously. That's what I'm going to call this. So before we do anything with our logic here, first of all, let's figure out how do we just apply validation list with scripts. Let's say I want to apply some validation to this B2 cell, right? So in order for me to do this, I'm going to go to my script. I'm going to start with my spreadsheet app. So first of all, let me just read this worksheet, this master worksheet to a variable, and this options list to a variable. I'm going to go here, var ws, that's our worksheet, and I'm going to take my spreadsheet app, and in this we're going to get our active spreadsheet, which is the current spreadsheet that's open, and I'm gonna get sheet by name. So the worksheet I want to open is this master one in this particular case. So that's the worksheet I want to work with. So in this worksheet, I want to be able to just apply some validation to this cell right here. So in order for me to do that, I'm going to go to that worksheet. I'm going to get range, and the range for now, I'll just type the range like this. So I'll say B2. So to that, I'm going to do set data validation. And here we'll have to provide a rule. So we need to create that rule. So to create that rule, I'm going to go on top here and try to create that data validation rule. So I'm going to do a couple of things to make this happen. The first thing, I'm going to make a nice array that's going to be the list of validation. All right, so I'm going to get an array here. I'm going to get a variable list, and that's going to be an array of some elements. So I'm going to go ahead and just type some values here. I'll do A, I'll do B, I'll do G, and it doesn't matter really, a few things here. And I want to apply that as the options for our validation. So I'm going to create a variable that will hold the validation rule. That is going to come from our spreadsheet app dot, and we're going to do this thing here called, let me see if I can find what it was called. New data validation. There it is. Dot, and here we have this require options, and one of those is require value in list, which accepts an array. So this value in list is going to be an array, and that array is going to be this array right here. So I'm going to just say, I don't know why I call this last, should be list, and then I'm going to call this one list as well. So that's the list I'm going to provide, dot, and here we're going to build that validation. Semicolon here, I'm going to save this. Now I could have left this like this, but because this gets pretty long, what I'm going to do, I'm going to just send this to a new line like this, and that is really exactly the same thing. It's just going to be easier for me to be zoomed in and be able to type this, and generally might be just easier to read later on. So I'm going to save this. Let's just apply this and see what happens, right? So I'm going to run this function right here. This is my function. I'm going to run that, and let's just give it a second. It will ask us for our regular permission stuff. So I'm going to open that, give necessary permissions here. Shouldn't be complicated. So if you watched any of my previous videos, you already know all the stuff. So I apply this. I go back. Let's go take a look what happened. So we've applied it to B2 cell. Let's go back. B2, see there is a list. If I open it, it says A, B, and G. Cool. So now let's try to do something else here. I want to show you something. Let's say I have a list that has some repeating items like this. I'm going to go ahead and try to run this to see what happens. So I'm going to run this. Let's go check it out. I'm going to open this, and I get ABG, same stuff we had before. Let's actually add something else here, F, and run that again. I'm going to go back and let's go check it out. See, we have this. So basically what I'm trying to show you is that even if we have repeating items similar to when we applied this validation, it's not going to have all of those. It's just going to have a nice, clean, unique list, which is great. That means we don't have to worry about cleaning out our lists and making it, unique lists. It's just going to happen automatically. So one other thing I want to do, so if you remember here, what I did when I was setting this validation rule, I made sure that I reject any other input that people type. So what that means, if I try to enter something different here, see, it basically gives me this error message. So I can only have one of these three options. Now in this validation list, if I just type this, see, it will let this go through. It will just basically say it's invalid. We just get the warning message. So I want to make this the same way, so it rejects the input. So to do that, I'm going to go here. After I do the require value in list option, I'm going to do another dot here. And here I'm going to do this option that says, there it is, set allow invalid. So basically here we want to set if we do allow invalid options or not. So I don't want to allow anything else, so I'm going to set this to false. And this now should change it that when we apply the list, we cannot have any other items in the list. So let me run this, make sure it works. Go back here, see we have the list. Now let me type something else here in the list, and we get an error message. Cool. So far so good. So we were able to just figure out how we apply validation. So what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to just create a function to just apply this validation to a cell. So I'm going to create a function, and I'm going to say apply validation to cell. So our regular function syntax stuff goes here. Just a little zoom out here so we can see what's going on. For right now, what I'm going to do, I'm pretty much just going to copy most of this stuff in here, and then I'll show you what I'm going to change in this one. So what I want this function to accept is an array list. That's going to be this list. We're going to accept it so we can apply the list to that cell. So I'm going to remove that hard-coded list and just do an argument in this function. What I also want to do, I want to make sure that I give it a cell to which I'm applying this particular data validation. So I'm going to say cell, and that cell is really going to be this. And because that's that, we don't really need all of that stuff here. So that's the way I'm going to transform this function. So basically, we're going to just create a rule using a list and the cell to which we want to apply this validation. I'm going to save it. Now the way I'm going to use this function when I need to use it, we'll have to, instead of doing this, we'll have a list and we'll have a cell. So for example, something like this. So I'll say var cell equals to this. And let me just apply it to different cells so we verify that this actually works. So let's do it for C2. And then I'm just going to run that function, right? So I'm going to copy this, paste it here, semicolon, and that will accept this list from here and this cell from here. So let's just verify and make sure it works. I'm going to run this my function thing. Go back and take a look. Awesome. Good. So now we have a function to apply this validation. So now I'm going to leave all of this alone and move to something different for a second. So I'm going to do this function on edit. This is a special function that runs every time you make a change on a spreadsheet. So this function on edit, so basically every time you go here and type something in a cell or delete something from a cell or really maybe change this, that runs this function on edit automatically. And that function actually accepts an argument, and that argument is the event. So we're going to call it E, short for that event. And that event, this E variable, has a lot of different properties that we can actually use in our advantage. So one of those properties that it has is this range property that's available, which basically gives you like a range or basically a cell similar to just getting like this. Only that's going to be the cell that was just modified. So if I take that and get the value of that, that will basically give me the value that was in that cell that I was just in. So similar to if I do this, I can do dot get value, right? And that's going to give me the cell that I'm in. So in addition to that get value, we can also, for example, get get the column. See right here, get column. There's going to be like all of these methods should be available the same way they're available here. So I'm going to remove this. Let's just save this in a variable var cell equals to this. Let me actually call it active cell. So just to make it more specific. So that's our active cell is that, and active cell value would be the value in the current cell that we're modifying. So if I switch it to Midwestern, that will be Midwestern. So what I'm going to try to do, I'm going to try to do something like this. I will take the value, whatever you select here, and try to put it here on the right. Now we have some validation here that may interfere with this. So let me for now just clear that validation. Again, go to our worksheet. Now we'll need to get this master worksheet again. Now, because I might have to use this multiple times, I'm just going to make this global variable like this outside of the function, so I can always refer to that worksheet and do things with that as necessary. Here, what I'm going to do, I'm going to take that worksheet, and in that worksheet, I'm going to get range, and the row is going to be the second row, and the column is the second column. So that's 2, 2. And I'm going to do set value. So I'm going to set the value of that cell to this, which is the value of active cell. So let's actually save this to a variable. I'm going to say var val. It's going to be this. And then I'm going to take that variable and put that in that cell. So I'm going to save this. Let's just test and make sure this works. Go back here and try to change this to, let's say, Southern, and see, we put that value here. If I go here and change it to Western, again, we take whatever cell I was just modifying, we take the value and put it in the cell. Even if I go to this cell on the right and type something, it's going to put that value in the cell. So right now, I'm able to just grab the value from anywhere that was modified and basically just put it in the cell over here. I'm going to delete that, and then it's going to do the blank in that cell. Now, the next step I want to do here, I want to change a little bit so that it only works in a row that I'm in. So right now, it doesn't matter if I change it here or wherever I change, it applies to the same cell over here. What I want to do right now is to apply things to the same row. So if you change it in this row, I want to apply in this row. If you change it here, I want to apply it here. So in order for me to do that, I will have to figure out which row it needs to be in. And that we can, again, get from here. Remember that get row, get column, all that stuff we have available here. So we can take that active cell. So here, instead of hard coding it to the second row, I can say just active cell dot get row like this. And that should get the row of the cell we were modifying. So I'm going to save this, go back. Let's try to check what happened. So I'm going to go here and do Midwestern. That does Midwestern here. Let's say I want Southern. That did Southern in the same row as I was in, like Western. Again, Western in the same row. But this is, again, is going to work wherever I am. So if I go here and type something, that's going to go here on the left. So I'm always now putting things in the second column, no matter where the modification is. So we might want to limit this to only happen when we change this in column A, instead of making this happen no matter where you're making the change. So I'm going to go here and make a little extra changes here. So instead of blindly just taking and doing this, we may run an if statement to make sure that the column we're doing this change in is in the first column. So to get the column, actually, I'm going to move all the stuff to a variable, this row. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to say var row. Actually, just R is fine for row. We'll do that. I'm going to do var C for column, and we'll get the column for that one. Something like this. And then we'll use this variable R here instead of doing that. And here, instead of just applying that, I can first check to make sure that we are in the correct column. So I'm going to do if and check if the column is equal to 1. Then we'll do this thing that we do over here. So I'm going to tab this in, save it. So hopefully with this change, we should only see this happens when we choose the drop down in the first column, and we'll avoid changing the value when we are in different columns. So I'm going to save this, go back here, and let's try this out. So here, if I change to Midwestern, that did it. If I change to Western, that did it. And if I change it, let's say over here, or over here, or over here, see, nothing happens now. So we're able to limit that to just the first column. That's where this whole thing happens. So if you change values in the first column, that's where we do this. Now, the other thing I want to make sure is that this doesn't happen when I change it here. So right now, if I change this region to, let's say, region 1, it's still going to go here and put region 1 because I limited to the whole column, but we probably don't want it to happen when we're in the first row. I'm going to add an extra condition here. I'm going to say, and if the row is greater than 1, only then we want to apply this. So we'll try to undo this like that. So now let's try this out. Hopefully now it only works wherever it's supposed to. So if I do region 1, nothing. If I go back here and switch to that works. And if we do it here, that doesn't do anything. Cool. So far we're able to get to this. So we're able to just react on our selection from this column. So one more thing I want to make sure is this. So if I add another tab here and go here, let's say, and type something, let's go back and see what happened here. See, it still did this. So if I even go to a different worksheet and change the value in that range, it's still modifying our spreadsheet over here. So I'm going to delete that. I guess I'll keep this just for testing. So we also want to make sure this only happens when we're modifying stuff from this worksheet. So to do that, I will have to make sure I get the worksheet name that we're on. So if we look at this range object, let's see if we can get the worksheet. See, it says get sheet. So we can do that. And then we can get, hopefully, the name of that. Yeah, and that would be the name of the worksheet. So I don't want to do it here though. I'm going to cut that. If I take that active cell again and check what the worksheet is, let's make a variable, WS name. So that's going to be this from that active cell, which should hopefully get us which tab we're doing this on. And then what we'll do in our if statement, we'll say if that's the worksheet, and actually I'm going to do this first. I'll say if the WS name equals to, and that's going to be the worksheet we want to do. And so the worksheet I'm targeting is, I believe it was called master. There it is. So I'm going to check if we are in master tab and we're in that range, only then let's actually do this. So save this. Let's go back. So first of all, let's make sure it works here. I'm going to do this. That worked. I'm going to go here and type some things and nothing. Good. So I'm going to delete that. That will so far clean that up. That's good. Now the next thing we want to do, we want to make sure that we don't just put whatever's here to here. We wanted to just go grab the appropriate list for validation and apply it to the cell on the right. To be able to do that, we have to read this options list and grab whatever's in here to an array. So let's go back here, and that's what I'm going to do next. Let's create a variable for that worksheet. So I'm going to say WS options. So that's going to be our options worksheet, and that tab is called options. So it's that. I want to read this entire range here to an array. So that's going to start from A2 through C all the way down. So to do that, we'll take that WS options worksheet and basically do get range from that. And we have to start that range from the second row, first column. So that will be 2, 1. And the number of rows we need to go down, it's going to be the last row is 12 minus 1 because we have 11 options. The first one is the header. So it's always going to be the number of rows minus 1 to exclude the header. So I'm going to take that options worksheet dot get last row. That should get us the last row. We're going to take that and do minus 1 to get to that 11. And finally, the number of columns I want is 3. And I'm going to do get values to read that entire thing to an array, which we'll save to a variable. We'll say var options. So that will read it to an options array. That should be basically all of this. So what we'll need to do, we'll need to get through this list and filter it to whatever is selected here. So to do that, I have this options array. And what I can do here, this val is going to be the value that we grab from here, whatever selected, which is great. So here, I'm going to take that options array and I'm going to filter that array, and that because it's an array, we'll have this filter method on this, and we're going to do a callback function for this filter method, and I'll do O for options, I guess, and we're going to return. So what I want to return is everything that's matching the value in the first column here in this array. So the first column is going to be the index 0 in my array. So I'm going to say, let's get that back if the first index in that O, which is the first column, is equal to whatever the value is in there. So that's the val thing. So that we'll save this to a variable again. So that's filtered options. So that will just filter, hopefully, if we do everything correctly, to basically an array like this, only it's not going to have these other options. It will just be, let's say, Midwestern options. But we don't want this whole array. We just need a list from that second column after we filter it. And to do that, we'll just map that filtered options to another array. So we'll do var list to apply. So that's going to be that filtered options, and we'll map that array. Again, that will accept a callback function. And then I'll do again O short for each option, and I'll return things from the second column, which is index 0, 1, which is O1. Here, that will be my list to apply as a validation. So what I want to do now is do pretty much this, apply validation to cell. So I'm going to use that function over here. So the cell in this case is going to be basically this thing right here. So if I wanted to, I can save it to a variable first. So I'm going to say var cell equals to this. That will be the cell. And the list will be this list to apply. Hopefully I got that right. So I'm going to save this and let's test this to make sure I did this correctly. I'm going to go back here and go to master and try this out. Let's go here and change it to, let's say, Midwestern. So that did not work. So that didn't set our validation. We'll have to see what we did wrong in this. I'm going to try to log the list to see if I'm getting a valid list. Let's hope logger works in this case, because sometimes when you work with these events, it doesn't function the way you would hope it does. But I'm going to test that out anyway. So southern here, I'll go here and try to see if I have anything in my log. I got nothing. So that's what I was worried about. Let's see if we can do console log instead of doing logger log. Probably likely to have the same issue here. Yep. So it's probably not going to work. Hold a second. Maybe it did work. So let's see. Cannot find function filter in object Midwestern. All right, so something is wrong there. So that did not work. Oh, can see why. Instead of doing get values here, I did get value. This should be an array. We're just getting one value. So I'm going to save that. Interestingly enough, apparently console log did work in this case. So let's do Midwestern. Okay, so that was good. So we got this. So that achieved our first goal. So right now, if I select something here, we get this validation applied, which are basically the states that match. So if I go under Western here, we'll see in list in Western, we should get, see, these two states, which is exactly what we get right now when I change to that option. One problem we're going to have here, if I go back here and switch this to Midwestern, yeah, that actually works pretty well, right? But if I clear this, what happens now? Hey, that's nice. That actually cleared that. What if I already have something in that cell? That's going to be a problem. See, if I go and just clear this cell, then we already have something here. Then I want to make sure that we also clear this thing. So that means we have to check if the value of this cell basically is blank. Then we need to just clean whatever's in this cell as well. So let's try to handle this. So I'm going to go here and check in here. So before we do all of this validation stuff, let's also do another if statement here and confirm that we have a value that's not blank. So we'll say if val is equal to basically this, nothing. Let's try strict equals to see what happens here. Then we want to just set the other cell, which is this cell dot clear content. So let's try this to see what happens. I'm going to save this, go back and check this out. So we have this. Let's just try this Midwestern, right? This gives us this. We select something here. Now we go to the cell and we just clear it. And that clears this one too. We might decide to clean this drop down in that case. And that might be a good idea because we will then escape doing all of this. So I guess I'm going to do that. I'm going to do an else statement here and only run this when we need to do that validation. But that also means that now I have to make sure that here I also clear the validation from that cell. So I'm going to clear the contents of that cell and we're going to also, let's see, clear validations. So let's see if that's enough to take care of that. So I'm going to save that, go back. So now if I'm here and I clear that, that also clears the validation. If I select something, that gives us our drop down. We have this. If we go and change this to Midwestern, probably when we change that, this should also clear the cell as well. So every time we select something here, we probably want to just clear this because it's not matching our validation anymore. Okay, so let's do that. So every time we select something from that list, well, this is going to be when it's blank. Even when it's not blank, we want to clear the contents of that cell on the right first, which is going to happen here. Save that. Let's go back and test this. So I do this, Midwestern. I'm going to get my validation. I'm going to select this. Let's say we switch it to Southern. That's going to clear that. Nice. So we have these two. I select this one. So that should be correct now in the cell. That error was coming from this other cells. So let's just clear that really quickly here so we don't have to deal with it. So nice clean list here. So Southern, we have these validations now. So if I go to Western, that should clean it up. It's going to go here. And if I clear it, it will just clear the validation from the cell. Okay, so this is something that works for our first two columns. Now we need to make this apply to this third column as well. So first I'm going to do a few little changes to our existing code. The first thing I want to do, I want it to be easier to change which column is the main column that we want to work with. So if we decide to change this column from column 1 to, let's say, column 2, this region column, then we don't have to do tons of changes to our code, and it's easier to make any changes if necessary. Okay, so to make these changes, first I'm going to create a variable for our columns where we want to check for validation. So I'm going to say first level column. That's going to be the first column where we're checking for this. So in this case, it's column 1. Then I'm just going to use that in my code. So I'm going to copy that. So the column that we're checking this in, remember, was over here. So we're checking in column 1. Now, if we decide to change it, that's not going to be 1 anymore. So I'm going to paste that here. So that's going to be whatever we use here in this first level column. I'm going to also make sure I do this for my second level column. So I'll say second level column, and that will be 2 in this case. That's where we apply our validation in the second column. So I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to change all of these 2's here to that variable to 2. So that should go. So this should go. I don't want this console log anymore here. So I think that cleans that up as much as we need, or at least it's pretty close. Let me do a couple of notes here. So this is closing our if function here. So I'll do close if. Now, hopefully take this to the next level. I'm going to also try to move this entire thing from here to its own function. So I'm going to create another function here. I'm going to say function apply first level validation. And then I'm going to go here and grab this entire thing from here and move it to this function. Let's see what parameters we'll have to pass for this to work. We'll probably have to pass this value. We'll have to pass this R, the row. We'll have to pass the column most likely. Where's the column? Well, maybe we don't need the column, so we'll see. I'm going to save that. Let's try this. So I'm going to do this apply validation function here. Let me see if this still works. So I'm going to save this, go back, go here, select something that gives us the list. We clear this. That clears it. So seems like that still works. So good. So we're able to just move it to its own function. So this just keeps this clean. And now we can now move on to the next one. So this was if we do it for this first level column. Now let's do an else if sort of statement. I don't think I need this anymore because I cleaned it up very well. Let's just do end on edit here so we know what that thing is for. And here I'm going to add an else if statement. So another condition we need to check for. And the condition I'm going to check for, it's pretty much largely going to be very similar. So we're going to check for all of that stuff again. We need to make sure this should be typed correctly. First of all, we need to make sure it's the master tab. We need to make sure the column this time is not that column. Now we'll be checking if the column is the second level column. So, and the row is bigger than 1, then we want to apply this. Now, because I'm repeating this master, 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 we probably want to also move that to a variable. We'll say var main ws name, something like that, equals to, and we'll make it master. And then we'll use that variable name in here. So that's this and that's that. I'm gonna change this to strict equals. So basically now if we were to apply this to a different tab, we only have to change it here. So I'm gonna remove this function because we are not really using that one anyways. And by the way, since we're gonna do this, we're using that master here on top as well. So I'm gonna move that on top here and use that variable name right there. Maybe we should change this to a variable as well. I'm actually gonna do that. ws name equals to. That's gonna be this thing, and that's what we're gonna use right here. So these are just things that are gonna make our lives easier when we try to make changes to this. That's good. So far we got all of that together. We figured out the first level. Now we have to do the second level. I'm pretty much probably gonna do largely the same. So I'm gonna do this and pass this. Now we're gonna make a different function. I'm gonna say apply second level validation. And basically I'm just gonna, for now, just copy this thing and see what we're gonna have to do with it for this to work, right? So I'm gonna do apply second level validation. So remember, now what I'm trying to do for the first level, it was if we choose something here, we apply our validation here. Now we need to do this next one. When we choose state here, we will have only certain sales reps to choose from in this third column. So now we're gonna go to this second level validation function. And in this function, first we'll check if that is blank. So if it's blank, we want to pretty much go and remove the content in here. And for that, that means we have to make the variable for that var third level column, and that will be column 3. I'm gonna copy that, move down, and do my changes. So if the value is blank, which is now is gonna be the value in the second column, then we wanna set that third level column. We wanna clear the contents, we wanna clear any data validation, and then if it's not blank, then we're gonna do all of this. So again, we're gonna go and get the range. We want to clear the contents again from that third level column, from the third column. Then we're gonna go to filtered options and filter it. We need to filter it to our value from our current cell, which is gonna be whatever's selected here. But we also have to make sure we filter it to a region as well. Now we have to filter this array right here by 2 columns. Now remember, the value we're gonna get is just the value that comes from the second column. We need to still figure out a way to get the value from the first column to see what we're filtering to. And for that, what we're gonna do here, we need to get the value. Well, we have the row. So since we have the row, we should be able to get the value from that first column as well. Let's go ahead and do that. So let's create a variable, first level call value. That should be equal to, we'll go to our worksheet and get range. and the row is going to be the row that we're in, R, and the column is going to be, well, that column for the first level. We'll use the variable here. So that, and we're going to do dot get value to get the value that is in that cell. So that should get us whatever is stored here. Okay, so now let's appropriately filter our list. So when we filter our list, we want to make sure that this first column is whatever is in that first column. So that's the 0 position. And now it's not going to be val, it's going to be whatever that value is in that first column. That. And at the same time, we want to make sure that whatever is in our second column, which is this one, which is R1 in this case, is equal to whatever the value is that's selected over here, which is going to be that val that we already had, which is the value from the current cell that was just modified. So that should hopefully be able to filter our array. This is not R, by the way. This should be O, which is the same as this one. And then we're going to need everything from which column here. So we're going to need everything from sales rep column, which is 0, 1, 2, second position. So instead of getting everything from the first position, that will be the second position. And then once we got that list we want to apply, we're going to take the cell. The cell is going to be the worksheet. We're going to get range. That's the current row. Now we want to apply it not in the second level column. We want to apply it to our third level column. So we'll do our third level column, and that will be our cell. And then we'll apply the list and the cell. The rest, I believe, should be the same. Let's try it. So I'm going to go to master, go here, select Southern. We got our list, click GA. We got validation. We got these two. Let's go check if that's correct. Paul and Dale. That's correct. That works just fine. Now let's change this to this. Clears. We got this. That is correct. Good. Let's clear it out. Let's see what happens. That works fine. Let's change this. Now I have a feeling that there's one thing we'll have to change is when we select like this. Let's say right now it works. If I just go and clear this one, then it's going to clear this one, right? But if I select this, for example, and I select the sales rep and then go here and change the first one or delete the first one, see, it only clears this one, but we possibly also want to clear this one because now the whole thing was changed. So we want to make sure we go back and change this first one so it clears not only this, but also this one as well. So let's go back, and that was our first level validation. So when the cell is blank, not only we want to clear this one and clear the validation from that one, we also want to clear those validations from that third level column. So if I just copy and paste that over here and switch it with our third level column, scroll down where we are here and here, save this thing. Let's go back and check out what happened. I'm going to go back here, try this again. So we have this, we select that. Let's say we go back and select this. That did not work. Let me go back and see what I did wrong there. Oh, so it's not like I did something wrong. Is that this was the case when we're clearing the cell. So if I clear the cell, it will probably work. But we also need to handle it here when there is a validation. So we're going to have to do this thing over here too for our third level column. There are probably all kinds of more fancier ways we can change this whole thing and rewrite it so that this now can be scaled to any number of columns. But I'm not going to worry about it to keep this as simple as possible for this. So let's go here and do this. Southern that We got our sales rep. We got our sales rep. Cool. Now I go here and change to Midwestern. That all cleared the cell, but seems like the validations are still there. So we probably need to make sure we clear the validation from here as well. So that's where we did this one. So we need to also make sure we clear the contents, and we also clear the validation rule from that third column. We didn't really have to clear for the second column because we kind of applied a validation anyway. Maybe it was a good idea to clear that too, just in case. So I'm actually going to do it. Second and third level columns. Okay, let's check that. That's this. Let's change this. Good. We clear that. Clears all of them. We do this. That applies here. We do this. Applies here. We can select the person. We can delete it from there. And that should just work out. We have this validation. And finally, lastly, let's make sure this works when we add more options to our options list, right? So let's test this out. So I'm going to go back and add a new region, for example. Let's call this one new region. And that new region is going to be New York State. And we'll say that's the rep called Anna. Let's add something to our existing regions as well. Let's go ahead and add something to Midwestern region. And let's add to the state Illinois. And let's add Bob to this list. Let's go back and check if this works. So now we should have new region here. And when I do that, I should get, see, New York. And the sales rep should be Anna, which was correct. Well, let's go ahead and select Midwestern. Let's see what we get. So Illinois is there. So now we should hopefully have Bob. We do. Cool. That should be enough. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe. And I'll see you in the next one.